Good afternoon. It's still good afternoon. It's not evening. All right, so I had prepared this slide more as an answer to a question that Samir was supposed to ask me in the panel discussion, but I'll try and do a justice to the slide, trying to explain. The question that he was supposed to pose to me was, Experian as a global leader in the sector that we play, how is AI being used in our environment to enable the lending fraternity to do a better job? So what I've tried to capture here is that if you look at collections, there are 5 things that an organization does. A multitude of data that they need to get access to, which is the credit bureau data. In the past, there were only 2 sets of data, the bureau data and the internal bank data. But if you look at today's times, the amount of data that's available for us to play with is just not the bureau data, but the whole alternate data ecosystem with open banking globally and our AA environment in India and multitude of alternate data that's there. Second is predictive modeling. Third is automated decisioning, personalized communication, compliance monitoring. Now, I'll give a little background. Our previous panel discussion and Mr. Nilkant's conversation about innovation and diffusion in AI. So Experian in our sector falls in the far right 10% of the companies who've taken AI as a lever to drive innovation and diffusion. Now, from innovation and diffusion perspective, we as a company, what we said is, if we were to solve this problem for our customers, we should first solve for ourselves. Because the challenges are similar. We have to build models. We have to deploy them faster. We have to make it useful. So what we're doing as a company globally to share the perspective, we build a platform which allows usage of data and get insights on the fly. I'll give you an example. You upload a file from bank's portfolio, and if you were to read that portfolio as an analyst and bring them up to speed on understanding the movement of, say, delinquency, the vintage, and things like that, it'll take a couple of days for that individual to prepare and come to you. Internally within Experian, we have provided these tools to these analysts to actually read this in seconds and minutes. Number 2, building models. Our friends from the fraternity, we all know to build a model and to deploy a model can take anywhere between 6 months to 12 months. And the environment that we are living in today, the changes are so dynamic, we don't have the luxury of 6 months to 12 months. So the deployment of AI to be able to do that faster and then monitor that model in terms of performance, what's happening. 3, which is everyone talks about since morning, we've been talking about AI largely used for productivity. So automating some of the actions that doesn't need humans to intervene can be personalized communication to the consumers when they receive that you have a collectible due you haven't paid. Understanding that consumer, that it is circumstantial, a sloppy payer, or is a willful defaulter, the communication could be very different and should be different. Again, in a scenario where we can't do hard calls at the door of an individual, these tools are extremely important. And last but not least is the compliance monitoring. What it means by that, we as lending organizations are expected to monitor our models that we build, are explainable, can be used. So in this area, what we've done is, from innovation and diffusion perspective, we built tools to help provide guide rails to our analysts and the developers that they don't go creating kind of biases in the activity that do. So if I summarize in the entire collection process, we help act as a subject matter expert. No more the knowledge can be concentrated to fixed set of people, but it's available to the entire organization to understand the data sets better, and you put the guardrails on collection knowledge onto that. Second, enhanced decision making. There are more retail lending happening across the world. The collectibles are increasing. How do you automate the allocation, which is the biggest challenge in collection? And then the efficiency boost in terms of automated decisioning. So we'll talk about this more in the panel discussion. As I said, I prepared this more from panel discussion. I'll invite Sudipto for his piece.
Thank you, Mr. Jain, for your expertise. I would now like to welcome on stage Mr. Sudipto Nag, President and Head of Retail Portfolio Management Group, Axis Bank, to come and share his thoughts on the same.
Good afternoon. I'm audible? Yeah. Thank you, Sudipto, for having me here. So next 3-4 minutes, I'm going to talk about the entire debt servicing. Before that, few of the questions which generally comes to mind, whether indeed the AI is going to leapfrog the entire way we collect in the market. If the question is yes, we have an answer to it. Is the need for repricing the entire collection cost? We spoke about revenue per employee. How about cost per account resolved? It is more like in telecom, generally you hear ARPU, right? It's similar type of vectors. Is whether the customer experience is limited only to selling of customers, or it is also for the service part to it in terms of debt servicing. In each of these points, we have AI as a larger part to it. When we look at a human brain, the left and the right side of the brain, the left is largely the cognitive part of the brain, which talks about predictive analysis. So the point what Manish was mentioning, largely we have a huge data set when we talk about bank. We have a liability data, we have customer behavioral data. Also, when we look at various alternate data, it helps in sharpening the entire predictive analysis. Now, having all those data, it helps in terms of a very sharp risk modeling. Where to allocate, when to allocate, what should be the decisioning, which are the recommendation channels which are to be used for the right set of customer connect, where we can get the best of the outcome. But standalone predictive AI is not going to help. There is a need to have a marriage with the generative AI, which is the right side of the brain, which talks about the creative part to it. It is largely to do with what type of content to be prepared, what should be the SMS, what should be the text, how human attributes are getting replaced with technology. So those are the very, very important element when we see. And the convergence of that is going to help us. Now, we heard Gautam also mentioned about n is equal to 1. Now, the risk is no more limited to the product. The risk is on the borrower. When the risk is on the borrower, your entire communication strategy, engagement strategy should be at a borrower level. Now, the generative AI is in a position to identify the content as well as the entire communication, what should be pitched to the customer, which generally on a human side will not be possible. So we'll just see a few of the things in terms of how it works. So when we talk about contactless collections, we have seen there are institutions who are having almost like initial bucket 60% contactless collections. What it helps? It helps in terms of repricing the entire cost of collection. Most of the banks today or the institutions are looking at how to reduce the cost to income ratio. These are important levers which are going to reprice the entire thing, helping in terms of strengthening the ROA, ROEs. Now the point is, when it started largely during the COVID period when the constraints were there. There was time when call centers were used to be the initial part of the entire customer engagement. But today, most of the call centers are getting decongested because human bots are taking call on most of the risk cases, which are not limited only to the initial buckets, but also on the deeper buckets. So when you look at the curve there, it is cutting across, starting from the bounds till the write-off, there is an opportunity to use intelligent bots, which can do the similar type of outcomes what human can do it. Now, when we look at few of the other cases, how the entire predictive analysis work. So when we do the predictive analysis, there are multiple small cohorts are being made. Each of the cohorts are not only from the standpoint of allocations, but also in terms of what should be the cost structure to it. And when it comes into generative AI, it goes into very specific, like what type of demographic segments are there, whether the customer is an infant in digital, or a migrant in digital, or native in digital. The communication strategy needs to change. If the customer is largely tech-savvy, what should be the mode of connect? If it is about field customer, the engagement should be more field, what time to call. All those nuances are being baked into the model so that the optimum outcome can be generated out of it. But if we look at, not only it is all story of urban, it is also story of rural. So when we look at satellite intelligence, now huge set of data are being consumed, multiple lakhs of data cubes, lakhs of data are being, images are being consumed, but in the contra, what it helps? It helps in terms of gauging in terms of what is the acreage which is getting sown, what is the status of harvest, whether there is a soil moisture, chlorophyll index, nitrogen content in the soils are being assessed or not, because all these are having bearing in terms of the productivity. But if you get to know each of these aspects, you can deploy the resource optimally, and as a result, you can save on the cost, and yet you can get best of the outcomes in terms of resolutions. And these are use cases which are now getting into underwriting also. Before it was onto the debt servicing. Consequentially, it should have been part of the first underwriting, that would have been part of the debt servicing. But when we see the use cases first started with debt servicing, now moving into the making of entire model of how the agri lending will be. Now, if I talk about another use case, which is about in lending, it is very, very important that the mobility piece is to be looked at. If thousands of people are to be deployed in the ground, whether they're indeed meeting the customer or not. And today, when we read on the data, we have seen how many times customer is being met, what is the face time spent per customers are also having a ramification in terms of outcome. But on the entire collection strategy, it is very, very important. Sometimes we hear how many visits are being done, what is the intensity is being rendered. The curve clearly shows every single customer. You can measure the face time spent per customer, and there is a clear-cut outcome which are visibly seen in terms of resolutions. So from the strategy standpoint, you can give a clear directive to the ground last person in the the value chain that indeed 3 intensities needed, you can render 3. There's no point of giving 4 intensity because that clearly shows diminishing of the efficiency. Then comes the entire overall story of the AI. Everybody feels that AI is going to solve all the problem. Consequentially, when you look at the AI part of the entire value chain is only 10%. The next biggest piece is the technology, the platform, which is going to carry the entire thing of the intelligence further getting disseminated to the execution team. The biggest piece of the entire delivery is this 70%, which is the people and the process, how the mindset is to be changed. We spoke in the morning, I heard skill building, how people are going to adopt, how organization structures are going to change. All these are going to play a very, very important role in terms of consuming the entire benefits of the AI, which finally going to build the outcome very, very strong and strengthening the P&L of the organization. So that's all from my side. So as we get into the discussion, we will be taking the set of questions which can help you in terms of building your models and strengthening the portfolio. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nag, for your insightful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for him. And keep that applause going as we call upon stage Mr. Rishabh Goel, co-founder and CEO of Credgenics, to share his thoughts. Give it up for Mr. Rishabh Goel, everybody. Over to you, sir.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm audible? Great. Yeah, I think a lot has been spoken with respect to AI since the morning. And I think when it comes to specific collections, though a lot of things have been covered, but still, when you hear the word collections, I think the first image you pop up in your mind is of a collector who is calling you or is visiting you. And that is the most common notion across, right? A lot of penetration, a lot of AI actually has been there on the underwriting side of the business. On the initial sourcing side, a lot of innovation was happening. But when it came to collections, it was, at least now, a lot of focus has come in. But while we deep dive, and maybe 4 or 5 years back, we used to see everyone is actually focusing on the underwriting part. And there were many reasons, many reasons. First reason is everyone is trying to solve for the credit penetration problem. In India, I think financial inclusion is a big problem statement. And multiple speakers spoke about it. But just a simple anecdote in terms of the gap of the overall financial lending industry. In India, we have roughly 1.2, 1.5 billion people. And on a scale, maybe that's not a right indicator, but still, we take an example of credit cards, right? Credit cards, we have 66 million, which is 6.6 crore credit cards, on a population base of 150 crore people. Now you compare this with US. On a population base of 33 crore, which is 30 million, there is 1.2 billion credit cards, which essentially means that there is 4 credit cards per customer. And the whole thesis is that the credit is so deeply penetrated and the money is flowing, which eventually is helping in building the overall economy. And that is the reason all the developed economies, the leverage, if you see the GDP to the leverage ratio, it's on a higher side because the credit is deeply penetrated. In India, we're not able to solve. The first way to solve for it was deepening the credit, maybe by solving underwriting. I think now we have been trying to solve it for collections, which enhances the overall comfort of the lender to actually work on the lending side. Yeah, I think so. This is particularly some data points. So I think when we talk about AI, right, the first thing which is very important is, do we have enough data? By virtue of the country we live in, I think we have so much data. Now it's how to ingest it. That is a major problem. Now, in terms of the mobile internet users, I think we have been, so there are almost 1.1 billion mobile users. This data is as of last month. And all thanks to also Jio, right, where we are doing this. The number of internet subscribers is 954 million, which is 95.4 crores. So if you see, there is so much data available for all the consumers and for all the lenders also who are serving them to sit on and to figure out how to actually use it and maybe deep root the intelligence at the borrower end and also at our end. Right now, when it comes to sourcing, we have seen so many fintechs coming up with loans on WhatsApp, loans, 5-minute loans disbursed in 5 minutes. But when it comes to collections, the same set of people engage in actually on-ground collections, doing it via call centers. The same philosophy which has helped them source loans is not helping them on collection. Now the whole thesis is that if you're able to source the customer on a digital channel, and if the customer is engaged on a digital channel, what is the reason that you are not trying to even use those channels to collect? The major problem which we feel and also is the common notion that it is intrusive. Like you are trying to, collection is something people generally don't want to do it, right? So there's no reason it should be hyper-personalized or personalized. But it is also vice versa, as Manish was mentioning, right? They're not all customers are willful defaulters. In a lot of cases, we have to use multiple type of data sources to even figure out whether actually there's an intentional default or it is a sloppy customer or it's just circumstantial. So figuring that out and using the right channel at the right time is what makes the entire difference. And that makes me come to the point which Sudipto talked about, difference between predictive AI and conversational AI. Now, predictive AI is actually helping us figure out which customers to be targeted by what channel, and conversational AI is helping us remove humans from the picture and make it more through bots, through a lot of these channels, which also are even borrowers like us are easy and like they're finding it very easy to interact with. And the reason is that you don't have any emotional quotient attached there. So the risk of things getting escalated, etc., is also less. And you have to have a very meaningful conversation where you can actually be to the point and show your intent to pay or not pay. So here, if we divide it into predictive AI, conversational AI, predictive AI is something which we will also speak about a lot in the panel, and I think Sudipto also spoke about. Coming on to the conversational AI, which is also the thesis, Gen AI, which we have seen, right, is taking the grounds, and a lot of startups have started focus on particularly Gen AI as to how to make even the interactions more human-like and also make it difficult for the end customer to feel whether they're actually speaking to a human or a bot at the back end. So that is where we also feel there's a huge power in terms of reducing the manpower cost, scaling the collections big time. When I say reducing manpower cost, obviously in India, we still feel that there are some cost implications on the AI side and things are being worked out. So it's, as of now, comparable to human cost, and hence, even that angle is not going away anytime soon. But still, with scale, we have seen that at least on the conversational side, things will actually help in terms of overall reducing the burden on the manual intervention. I think another question which comes up again big time, that whether AI will lead to loss in jobs, which is a big debate across the community, and I think multiple people have now spoken about it. But if you see, when it comes to conversational AI, we definitely know it is going to reduce humans. But there's another angle to look at it. The another angle is that if you're able to overall increase the pace of economy, if you're overall able to, in our context, right, if you're able to give out loans to many more people versus we are able to do now, so AI will only help us improve productivity and involve more manpower in the entire ecosystem versus cutting jobs. A call center which is running maybe with 10,000, 15,000 people, maybe that can cater to 10x the volumes if we are able to use some of this technology and actually leverage it to the best potential. So with the same set of manpower, the overall economy can grow, because at this point in time also, I think the dream of $10 trillion economy by 2028, it's only achievable if all these technologies are deep-rooted. I think these are some of the things which are specific to collections, which have been spoken in depth earlier also, how you can actually get collection insights and borrow risk forecasting, some early warning system, which is very important in the current context, that you are able to detect early defaulters or delinquent customers before they even enter the delinquency bucket, how you can make communication personalized. A lot of it has happened on the marketing side, where a lot of customers are given the type of content they want to consume to increase the engagement levels, but that is not the case, at least in the collection side. So that is on the personalized communication. Then there are multiple other pieces around allocation, automation, etc., which have been spoken about, and we'll also speak in detail. This is also on the customer engagement side, which is on the Jain AI side, how we can introduce a lot of bots. Recently, we have seen a lot of video bots have come in, where instead of a voice bot, even a customer video will play in front of you where you can engage. Actually, you can engage, and they try to understand of what you are trying to say. And the level of engagement on the video channel is much, much higher than a voice bot channel. So even videos have been started to use AI. Now, obviously, there's a misuse of it also, which has happened in multiple instances. But with the right set of compliances in place, this can be a real game changer, at least in the lending ecosystem. Multiple use cases, collections being one of them, underwriting becomes another. So maybe I think we'll talk about it more in detail. As a company, we also started 5 years back now, investing heavily on the collection side, doing pretty well now. We have also been able to, and with the increased focus on the AI and automation, so we have also been able to attract a lot of customers who are actually focusing big time on AI, doing decently well. We have raised close to $80 million in equity capital from some of the reputed names, and continuing to invest in this sector and see how we can scale this up. Thank you.
Let's now invite on stage our moderator for this panel discussion, Mr. Samir Singh Jaini, founder and CEO of The Digital Fifth. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Mr. Jaini. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think a lot of points which we were supposed to discuss have already been picked up. And as I see the clock, it's actually ticking. So we'll keep it. I'll also keep it short. I'll just keep the context that we talk so much about AI reaching out to normal people like a ChatGPT and structures like that. And then we talk about AI for collections. I think one of the biggest worry I have is this kind of framework will work very well for large organizations, but there are a lot of small NBFCs and mid-sized banks. They have to figure out how to adopt through these kind of technologies and journeys. So I see it as of now, the pattern is more towards very large entities. Mid-sized guys, I've not seen much deployment on collection side. I'm sure many of you are from those backgrounds. Also, if you look at generically in the market, the focus has been largely on sourcing the customer. Also underwriting. So if sourcing and underwriting, you see a lot of focus has been there on sort of what you say, digitizing it. So AI adoption will only happen if you are able to digitize it. And if I see today, and there's always a lag. So first you do digitization and then you do AI. You won't do reverse. And if I see it today, I think almost all our use cases, so we work in the country as a firm, as a consulting firm with so many assignments, and I'm being hand on my heart, almost none of the transactions have been on the collection side. It's always on the origination side because that's how the psyche is. We have to originate. Interesting part is the market is changing dramatically, right? If you look at today, the collection issues are very severe. We know that both on PL side and as well as microfinance, maybe this is the time for us to accelerate the process. I think this event itself is a big boost to AI, and hopefully, as we pick up this case, many of you will go back and figure out how do you sort of use AI for underwriting cases, beyond that underwriting, maybe for collection as well. And that's a moment. I'll pause now. The intent, obviously, is to ensure that we have some engagement with the participants here. We are running short of time, so maybe I request maybe we can start the panel itself as we go forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jaini, for your words. I request you to kindly remain on stage as I welcome back our panelists to their seats. I request Mr. Manish Jain, Mr. Sudipto Nag, and Mr. Rishabh Goel to join us on stage so that we can begin our panel discussion.
ऋषभ भाई EP लगा दिया प्ले करना है इसे।
Okay, maybe this is not working. Is it? Okay, I think I'm audible. So I think with this much of depth of session we already had, I'll keep question very short, and maybe the answers can also be shorter given that I think clock is working. Maybe there's also a discussion about business outcomes on the collection side. So Manish, if you could share that, what is the business impact you can see in realistic case across the world on the business outcomes from AI?
I think as I was sharing in my presentation, or the coverage I was trying to do, is the biggest business outcome would be how do you quickly go through the quantum of data that we are faced with, one. Two, if you're building models, can it be built not just on a subset of data, but can it be done on the entire set of data? Three, personalization, hyper-personalization, you cannot underplay that. That had serious repercussions on collection efficiency.
Okay, perfect. Maybe a bit of a jump to the next question to Sudipto, to you. I think what are the kind of top technology investments banks should be, lenders should be making in the collection side on AI? And also from a deployment perspective, what kinds of skills are required, experiences are required? What should be because those who have, there are very few people who have done it. So how do they start their journeys?
Yeah. So largely, if I look at, I spoke about the micro segmentation and all. Large number of data sets are being looked at. Each of the datas, once the micro segmentation is done, the data is one part to it. The best thing is how we make the end use of the data very, very sharply as it is intended. So that system comes in. The most of the time we see the workflow systems in the general collection workflow system. What is needed right now is the intelligent collection workflow system. Now, how the intelligence comes in, when the risk scorecards are being built, when the AI models are being built, where it is hosting, that becomes very, very important. Because if the hosting system is indeed the nervous system of the entire workflow system. Because if that hosting system is not able to host the scorecards properly, the entire strategy layer will not work, because the hosting system is going to send the signal how the data will get transmitted further to each of the channel, and the channel orchestration works there. What should go as as a campaign, what should go as a contact list, and what should go to the call center and employee. That the intelligent layer is very, very important part to it. Now, while I talk about it today, if you look at most of the systems are quite fragmented, and people are trying to do AI use largely in the form of a very, very small fragmented, trying to stitch together. Then the best outcome we will see when everything is stitched together, and then comes the layer of the customer engine, which is basically the CRM part to it. Because as we look at most of the sourcing are to the digital in nature, customer self-servicing going to be the future. It's not about nudges all the time. Customers should be able to see it in their time, when they can click sitting at home, goes through a bureau simulator. Manish, that going to be a big game change, where they see that the behavior has to be shaped, and customers should make the payment at their time. So UI, UX is going to be the next big change, while we embrace on the AI part to it.
Okay, thank you.
One of the part in terms of the people in the process, while we go it in the format of AI, the governance also plays very, very important, because how many times the nudges are to be sent, when one should be called. Those are very, very important software aspect to it, because AI is not liberated all the time. It is like the full governance of the entire collection architecture, and the codes which are being shared by regulators are to be followed by the machine as well.
Okay. No, I think governance model for AI, I agree on that point. When you, I think, Rishabh, when you work with a lot of lenders and you pitch your product and services, one of the problem statement is to show ROI. There's always an implicit factor that Hogan AI will not work, and maybe collections is not the area we should focus on, underwriting and sourcing much more, even today. So how do you sort of convey this message? And you stand with the customer in maybe our post-implementation as well. So how do you show value post that? And what kind of KPIs as lenders here should sort of track?
I think in collections, the KPI is the easiest ones to track, right? It is the amount collected, your time you are taking to collect. So very clear, straightforward indicators in terms of cost of collection, time to collect, and the amount being collected, right? If you have to broadly break KPIs, these will be the three broader KPIs. Now, how can system bring in efficiency? It can be on either one of these KPIs, or it can be on a mix and match of these KPIs. So whenever there is any system implementation which happens, right, or at least maybe it is true for all the deployments, but at least when it comes to the collection side, we need to figure out what is the major problem shift of lender. And it will depend upon the journey they are in, right? Like Samir, you mentioned, right? Some mid-size NBFCs, the focus is more to grow the loan book and stabilize. In some big lenders, the focus is more to optimize on the P&L so that the cost to collect goes down. And overall that helps them improve the numbers on books, right? So the problem statement can be very different. But when it comes to actually the system implementation, we need to figure out firstly the KPI, and then also what to expect out of a system. As in collections, you cannot expect everything to happen through a digital channel, that is for sure. But how you can optimize the overall frequency, maybe it's not even necessary that the customer who is paying on a call will not pay on a digital nudge. We have seen so counterintuitive studies that people were not replying over manual calls but are repaying over a digital nudge. So it essentially means that you can optimize both of them, but yeah, there has to be data for it. When it comes to data, Sudipto also mentioned there are broken and fragmented pieces of it. So how all the data can come together at a single place, and there you can build some models which always takes 3 to 6 months to train. And then when the output comes, that becomes very powerful, because that is a scalable way to scale even collections, and you can reduce the overall manpower involved or even improve the productivity of people involved there. So very easy KPIs, but yeah, it has to be system driven, and the data has to reside at a single place for AI models to learn, and also at least give them 3 to 6 months to showcase what you want out of them, versus obviously there are a lot of impatience in the entire ecosystem when it comes to lending, right? Like if you deploy the system day 1, then day 5 it has to give out us a reduction in cost or improved results. So that is not going to happen, that's unrealistic expectations, but at least 3 to 6 months is a good enough time frame for you to see what's the output.
Oh, thank you. As we are about to run out of time, maybe we'll keep it very short. Maybe one question I'll shoot again to each one of you. I think we missed this point earlier on the how collection data can be used for decisioning from a credit perspective early, right? So the loop is missing. Generically, always one way. So you do underwriting and then you do collections and never go back and refit, at least on not on an immediate basis. Whereas in real world, you need to make an immediate impact. So how do you think that lenders should think about mixing collection data with underwriting on real time?
In my opinion, and I think the loop of collection activity, the signals that we are getting and bringing it back into sourcing and acquisition underwriting, if that doesn't happen, no matter what AI we may deploy, it's of no use. I think the biggest power that AI can provide is, earlier it couldn't be done because it's too much data to work with. Now with this tool set and technology that Sudipto was mentioning, I think the key lie in right technology platforms available for lenders to be able to read, digest the data, build models that can be monitored and that can be deployed to consume faster. I think that's the biggest key in terms of that loop. It's not that lenders didn't want to use that loop. It was hard to do it. I think now there is capability available in the ecosystem to be able to host, read, build models, deploy them at scale, and monitor them at scale from compliance perspective.
Perfect. Thank you. Sudipto, there's so much of talk on DPDPA and of data privacy and others, and there are a lot of risks and issues which can happen as part of usage of AI. I mean, typically in the collection stage, people may be not intentionally doing it. They may be in a different situation. You may have also a lot more worries. We have seen it earlier. How do you ensure that those issues are really well managed when you deploy AI? Last thing you want is you have suicides happening because AI went berserk and pushed the customers on the wrong side. So how would you control that?
So data privacy is going to be the complex thing which each of us will have to conquer. The point is what is to be allocated and how it is to be allocated is the larger part to it. Again, I will go back onto the technology part. The data, what is getting disseminated down in the ground for the engagement, it is a platform which we need to look at. The CRM layer should be the intelligence which stays at the bank premises only. What is being exposed to the partners, outsourcing partners around, is only the information where each of the datas are all masked, right, are encrypted, so that only the the key customers are being engaged for the purpose. And once the dispositions are being updated and submitted, nothing stays in the outside the office, outside the bank. That's how we have to hold the data. While we do it, it is very, very important that even the callings which are done are properly masked. Each of the mobility apps which are there should only carry those information which are needed at the operating level. What is not needed, which is having no relevance to it, because all the scorecards are made back-end, right? We have to just think that if all intelligence is being fed, it is only the engagement part to it. There is no point of pushing any of the sensitive data which can be misused. And that's how we have to work on building those systems. So first is the technology will be the backbone, and the data part will be all in-house, inward looking. Execution will be in the ground.
Thank you. Thank you, Sudipto. I think, Rishabh, since you make these kind of platforms, how do you ensure that as part of the build phase itself, you incorporate all the compliances and DPDPA structures and all of them upfront? Because the moment those changes will happen, it may have a serious impact. And then obviously the risk of data leakage and others there. So, and collection is very sensitive data, right? Nobody wants the data to go out. So how do you manage that?
So see, on the data part, as rightly being mentioned, a lot of serious scrutiny has happened. I think regulators have also been really serious about it. So though we feel that SaaS is the way forward and software as a service, right, which are mostly on public clouds, have been able to scale, and that is also the trend going forward. But now if you have to balance it out with the right risk measures in place, I feel, and what the lenders are, right, because any which ways there is a risk associated to it. So one part is now even the banks have started to adopt their own internal clouds, which are owned by them, maybe private cloud or public cloud. So as a technology platform, it is immaterial that whether you are hosted on your cloud or others' cloud. So we have made ourselves flexible enough that we actually get deployed on the bank's internal clouds in multiple places, and also sometimes it's a private server, so that the data doesn't go out of the bank ecosystem. which is very important. Now, one con to it is, right, you are not able to train the model on industry-specific data. Now, when I say industry-specific data, it essentially means that some lender who is on the personal loan side, right, if now across the states or across the pin codes, the pattern of collections will not be visible to them at an industry level, versus their data, own data would be modeled and will be giving out outputs in terms of the efficiency, in terms of what should be the next steps, etc. Whereas if the deployment happens on a public data source, maybe not the KYC details, but at least some features which are anonymous and also are not linked with any specific individual, the power of AI increases and enhances because the data becomes more enriched. But considering limitations, I think at least this is good for big organizations and big banks. But as you rightly mentioned, on the small and mid-sized banks, they'll not be able to use or leverage AI to its fullest capability if we get restricted by the data thing. But yes, both have to go hand in hand. So we are figuring out the best way possible in terms of how to manage both. Yeah.
Thank you, Rishabh. I think as a summary, I would say that the need is there. I think clarity is there. Given the environment in the market, the kind of NPAs we're seeing in the market in many segments, the need for deploying it right now is very high. I think the challenges we will see, I personally see, is that other than the top maybe 5 to 10 players, the rest will find it very difficult. I think it's time for make it more scalable and more democratic by nature. So I'm sure people like you will actually bring it, and your skill sets will take it to market as well. Thank you, and thanks for your patience, and thanks the L&T Finance team for inviting us. Thank you.